Knowing that the expedition cruise I wanted to do would cost me the same as buying a new luxury car, I needed to make sure that the line I went with would deliver something special and make every dollar worth it. After much deliberating, I decided to entrust Silversea with this huge sum of money, as I've been on shorter expedition cruises with them before, thought they did a good job, though I was really apprehensive as the cost of getting this wrong was so enormous. On this trip, I discovered just what Silversea Expedition are doing well and not so well these days, as you'll hear. I'm Gary Bembridge, and I booked myself on an epic and costly 18-night Falklands, South Georgia and Antarctic Peninsula expedition cruise on Silver Endeavour, the breakdown of the costs of which I will get into later. But first, let me explain what Silversea Expedition actually is. Silversea is an ultra-luxury cruise line owned by the Royal Caribbean Group. They have a classic fleet doing regular port-based cruising in places like the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, Alaska, and so on. They also have, though, an expedition fleet with, at the time of recording, 3 ships focused on the polar regions: Silver Endeavour, Silver Cloud, and Silver Wind, and 1 ship in the Galapagos, Silver Origin. I've now been on all of those, by the way, except for Silver Wind. What did I find they do well these days? I believe many of the things they do well, and a key reason I chose them over others to entrust my money to, was their long experience in expedition, and Antarctica specifically, which shows in the first set of things that they do really well. For example, the range of itinerary options catering to different groups. In Antarctica, they have the ultimate intensive itinerary that I did, Falklands, South Georgia and Antarctica, for people like me wanting a deep dive. But they also do shorter 10-night peninsula-only cruises for those wanting to just visit the icy 7th continent, and even shorter airbridge trips where they fly guests onto King George Island within Antarctica, avoiding having to travel the unpredictable Drake Passage. Their long experience means they do something I feel is better than other expedition lines I've been on in the last few years, which is the expedition team. They are a key reason I chose to come back to Silversea for this really costly trip. On my trip, the expedition leader was Marika Egan, who has long experience with Silversea and in Antarctica. It was clear the captain had huge faith in her judgment, and they worked well together. There was a 22-person expedition team plus 3 supports, including ornithologists, marine biologists, geologists, historians, nature guides, and a 3-person kayak team. The team included 2 Mandarin interpreter guides and a Chinese-speaking guest lecturer to cater to 19 Chinese travelers on our cruise. I like that they had built-in resources to cater for this. One disappointing omission, though, was no photographer or videographer who used to provide quality photos and a video of each Silversea expedition trip. On inquiring, it seems it was cut just before my trip across the fleet. Hopefully they will rethink, as it's a big miss. More on that later. As an aside, there were 183 guests on the trip and 42 nationalities. Only a third were from the United States, so it was a very diverse and mixed crowd of people. Age range was broad, but I'd say average age was at least mid-60s. The expedition team seemed lacking in depth at first, and I was a bit worried on the first day, but they dramatically improved as they got into their stride. We had great recaps each day with videos, photographs and insights of the things that we'd seen. The daily briefing by Marika was in-depth and clear, and the enrichment talks were, with maybe 2 exceptions, very strong. There were at least 3 talks a day on sea days, and I counted up about 20 across the whole cruise. The expedition team would be out on deck on sea days, helping spot birds and whales, and available in the study to chat. I also thought Silversea handled the weather and ice challenges incredibly well, from their knowledge of the region built up over the years, which can make or break an expedition cruise, how a line handles this. I know no expedition trip ever goes to plan, especially in Antarctica, due to constant changing weather, storms, wind and ice, which means every day must have multiple plans and options. I felt they handled this all incredibly well, and again better than other expedition lines I've been on recently. When nature got in the way and things could not go to plan, I felt Marika and the captain always managed to pull something out of the hat. So every day we experienced something that felt significant, even if it was not what we were due to see or do. Important again, considering the money that we had all spent to be there. For example, we were chased by a storm from the Falklands to South Georgia, and when we got there, the wind and the swell was ferocious, making landings impossible. They took the ship to shelter in a bay, and when the weather cleared the next day, I discovered that they placed us in an unplanned landing location, Possession Bay, which was teeming with wildlife, had a glacier-filled landscape. It actually was one of the most memorable landings that I had on the entire trip. They shuffled days around in South Georgia to make sure when the weather actually calmed, we got to land in the iconic and bucket list Salisbury Plain. And then based on sea swell predictions, they tweaked the route sailing to the Antarctic Peninsula to be able to land at Bailey Head on Deception Island, which has over 100,000 chinstrap penguin colony and is hardly ever called on due to the swell of the ocean. So every day they would always find a way of us having a magical experience, even though it was way off plan. I also found that they were better than other lines I've been on explaining what was happening and why it was happening, and taking all of us with them. For example, when they decided we needed to leave a day early to go across Drake Passage, instead of just announcing it, they called everyone together at lunchtime between some landings we had, where Marika and the captain explained in detail, using weather charts along with the plan of activities for the unexpected day in Port Williams. The next thing they do well is having the Silver Endeavour ship as an option these days. Unlike some of their competition like Seabourn and Viking with consistent ships, a Silversea downside is they have 3 very different ships of varying ages and different experiences, with the 220 passenger Silver Endeavour being a real plus and a big standout. It was built for Polar Expedition cruising by Crystal Cruises, and it came into service in 2021. Silversea bought it in 2022 when Crystal went bankrupt. They made some changes like removing the helicopters, submersible and the casino, but left the decor pretty much as it was. Now I've been on Silver Cloud, which is a more dated ship, and I found in Silver Endeavour way better. Let me give you a quick tour of the ship to show you why. On deck 10 is the sun deck, which has a walking and running track, and some of the Zodiacs and kayaks are actually stored here. On deck 9 is the observation lounge with a bar overlooking the bow of the ship. It was really great when scenic sailing. They also run the activities like trivia, evening entertainment in here as well. There's a well-stocked library also on this deck, and opposite that is the study, where the expedition team are based during the day, where you can catch up with them. The next public spaces are actually down on deck 5, where they have Silversea Standard, the Arts Cafe, which is a great venue open from 6:30 a.m. until 6 p.m, serving coffees, drinks and snacks relevant to the time of the day. Also in here is reception and the future cruise sales desk. Now further down deck 5 is the spa, the beauty salon and a decent sized fitness center. There's also a small boutique selling merchandise, jewelry and souvenirs on deck 5. Then at the rear, with scenic views, is the pool grill, the informal dining area. For me, this is the only venue that doesn't really work. There's a pool which can be covered over, which it was for our cruise, with one brief exception, I guess, to show us it. But the venue kind of lacks style and overall atmosphere, I felt. The grill serves buffet breakfast, buffet lunch, and in the evening becomes a reservation required steakhouse venue. More on that and the food a bit later. Then down on deck 4 are some really important venues, including the Explorer Lounge, where all the briefings, the recaps and the talks are held. Also things like the captain's welcome and farewell were held here. There are 3 dining venues on this deck. The restaurant, which is the main dining room, open for breakfast, lunch and dinner. And just before it, bizarrely in the corridor, is El Terrazzino, the reservation required Italian restaurant. Tucked away next to a table tennis room also on this deck is La Dame, their premium added charge French restaurant. Also on deck 4 is the Connoisseur Corner, the cigar and smoking room. Then right down on deck 3 is the mud room, which is where you store your boots and board and leave the Zodiacs that you use for all off-ship activities. The free guest laundry room is also here too. The ship has 6 different suite grades, but 80% of the cabins are veranda suites like the one I stayed in. The price based on the location. Now I booked 717, which is called a premium veranda suite, which was midship. The reason being it's a really good location for the rough seas that you have on this itinerary. Now while it's called a suite, it's just a good sized cabin. I like the modern decor, the comfortable bed, the seating area, the desk and the bathroom, which had a separate toilet. It has an included minibar, it has a coffee machine. There were, though, a few odd issues with the suite, like that it needs elastic bands on the shower door to stop it slamming and crashing around in rough seas, and the sliding doors between the toilet and the bathroom and the walk-in closet were rammed permanently open with wedges to stop them moving, slamming and rattling around in the weather. So a couple of things that need addressing. One thing that I wasn't a fan of at all was for every 2 cabins there is a shared door onto the corridor. So instead of having interconnecting cabins, you could actually make that the main door to 2 cabins. Now as the 2 cabin doors then face each other, if you have, as I did, people in the cabin next door that love slamming doors, you have 2 sets of loud slamming doors every time they, or in fact the crew, come and go. I actually found that really annoying. Another thing I rated highly was the food. Now I've had hit and miss food on most expedition cruises I've been on recently, but I thought this was very good and they matched their classic line offering. The main dining room, the restaurant, as I mentioned, was open for breakfast, lunch and dinner. I personally ate many breakfasts and dinners in there, and while the menus are not particularly expansive, they had a really good choice and, with very few exceptions, really well prepared food. I also found the food in the 2 specialty restaurants, the Italian Il Terrazzino and the steakhouse The Grill, good as well. Now the Il Terrazzino menu changed every couple of days and I actually ate there twice. The Grill evening menu, though, never changed, but I did eat there twice too. The Grill is also a buffet for breakfast and lunch. It's not a huge buffet, but it's pretty good quality, has items to order. At lunchtime they had a chef station offering special dishes of the day like fried wok, Indian and so on. They actually had great sushi every lunchtime, which I really liked too. Now I did not try the added charge restaurant Le Dame because I felt there was no need to pay to dine on top of that huge fare that I'd already paid. I found the service was another plus. The crew all seemed to know everyone's name, preferences were really friendly and chatty. I really thought the crew were fantastic. On all Silversea ships, no matter what cabin, you have a butler who do things like sort out the room service, the minibar and so on, and then a cabin steward who keeps the cabin clean and tidy. Again, both of those were really, really great. Next, I thought overall they did pretty well with fare inclusions, though there are some issues that I will come to. Now this expensive fare did cover most things that I needed on the cruise. So it included the food and room service, other than Le Dame that I've mentioned. Drinks, including the minibar, are included, although some premium wines that, if you're really a wine buff, were extra. Gratuities included enrichment talks, entertainment like trivia, quizzes, music by the guitarist and pianist, and of course all of ship experiences like Zodiac rides, landing and kayaking were all included. We also got a really nice expedition parka, a water bottle and a great waterproof bag rucksack. Now on my trip, unlike the Antarctic bridge voyages, the fare did not include the required waterproof trousers and the boots. Now, I brought my own waterproof trousers, but it cost $98 plus $100 deposit to hire the boots. This seems crazy to have to hire boots when you're spending the price of a brand new luxury car to go on a cruise, especially when they have them on the ship anyway. Many other expedition lines do not charge for them. They did, by the way, include Wi-Fi, but it was very limited despite being Starlink. Recently, they restricted it even more to exclude streaming, social media posting, and audio or video calling. Now, I upgraded to the premium Wi-Fi. It cost me $730 for 2 devices. Considering the fare, again, I feel that should be included. The premium Wi-Fi using Starlink in Antarctica was fantastic, and I only had 1 or 2 occasions for an hour or 2 where it didn't work too well. It was really impressive. If all of those things are things that Silversea Expeditions gets right these days, what do I think they're not doing so well at? I've already mentioned this, but I think it's worth mentioning again, and it's the inconsistent fleet. Some of their classic cruise line competitors that have gone into expedition cruising like Seabourn and Viking, they have consistent fleet. So you know the facilities, the cabins, and the experience will be the same on all itineraries, but not on Silversea. Now, having been on Silver Cloud, which I liked, but is pretty dated, Silver Endeavour has much better facilities and cabins, and personally I would now only choose Silver Endeavour unless the other ships really had an itinerary that I absolutely wanted to do. It is very costly going on this being an ultra luxury line, though the prices when I looked are broadly in line with their closest kind of ultra luxury competitors. Silversea at the time of recording offer 3 fare types: door to door, port to port, and essential. The door to door is basically where they include transfers from home to the airport, flights, pre-stay hotels, the cruise, excursions, any required post-stay hotel, flights home, and even a transfer back to your door. Port to port is cruise only, where excursions are included, and essential, which are basically more last-minute fares and are non-refundable, and they don't normally include excursions. But for an expedition cruise like mine, as the trip started and ended in Santiago, while the cruise left from Port Williams, all fares, no matter which one you had, included one-night pre-stay hotel and the charter flights to and from the ship. And it did, of course, include all the off-ship rides and landings because it was expedition. But let me talk about my specific costs. I booked door-to-door fare, and if I look at the cost with economy flights, the trip cost $44,000 or 35,000 pounds. That's $2,400 or 1,900 pounds a day, which would cover 2 people. But because I couldn't get a solo deal, it cost me that much just for 1 person. So catering for solos is something they do less well. They do have limited solo deals with just a 25% surcharge. I searched at the time of making this particular video to see how many there were, and there was only 1 Antarctica cruise listed with a solo deal within the next 2 years. So not great. Another thing they do less well is those bizarre cuts and changes I've mentioned that I do want to talk about again. Dropping the photographer and videographer with that sort of fare is a poor decision in my view, as most people were just using their iPhone, and you don't get great shots in Antarctica, especially of the wildlife that way, without a quality zoom camera. I strongly believe sending people home with a video and great photos to share with family and friends should, as many expedition lines do, be included in the fare. And it's really, I think, a simple marketing tool that could entice those friends and family to book the trip when they look at these quality photos. I think the same with cutting what is possible to do on the included Wi-Fi. I was posting a lot on social media, and I lost count of how many people were responding saying they were adding this trip to their bucket list, or even some people said they were now starting booking. Even friends of mine who really have no interest in cruising with me before, they're never interested in the area, they have now asked if I will consider going back because they want to book on the trip and go with me. Imagine if up to 200 people were posting on every trip if Wi-Fi allowed them to do. I think this could be a huge opportunity. Was Silversea worth it with all of these pros and cons? It was absolutely one of the most magical and memorable experiences of my life and cruising career. Of my 3 trips to Antarctica, it was by far the best by a long way, and it was a great choice despite the huge cost. I would find it difficult, based on this, to consider a different expedition line again to Silversea, based on my experiences. Wherever I go to, Silversea will be top of the list. If you want to know why, by seeing what I experienced off the ship, join me over in a vlog where I will take you place by place to see the incredible wildlife and scenery. You should not miss this one. See you over there.